Alright, welcome everybody on YouTube. Today I'm going to be looking at a battery light on the Honda Accord. I got a 2010 Honda Accord. This is the V6 model with the 3.5 liter engine you see here. So the first thing you want to do when you have this battery light is you want to get a voltmeter, something like this here. You don't have to use one this fancy, but you can use one that just reads standard volts. So I'm going to put this on volts. And you want to connect the leads to the battery. Stick that in here. Put the negative there, positive here. So we got 11.95 volts, which is pretty normal. It's a 12 volt battery. However, when you crank this thing, I can't do it right now to demonstrate because I have the belt off currently, but when you crank this voltage actually drops. So that tells me that the alternator is not charging the battery. You want to actually see this voltage go up to about 13, 14 volts while it's running. So therefore I've determined that my alternator has failed. So today we're going to replace the alternator, which is right down in here. You can see it on the back side. This is where the battery cable goes in right there on the top of it. So they do have it wedged in here. It's really tight. You see down in here. Go over here, you can see the front pulley there where the belt is just hanging off of it. So I went ahead and pulled this belt off because it's really difficult to do while I'm filming. But you need to begin with taking off the belt. Then right here on the automatic transmission model, you can see where I have my ratchet in here, the little chrome ratchet. It's going to be on the belt tensioner. There's a little nut on there that it's sitting on, and I got the ratchet handle coming up through here. So you really want to get really long breaker bar for this. I didn't have a breaker bar with me at the time, so I had rigged something up. I had put my wrench on top of my ratchet like this here and used it as a pry bar to push forward towards the back of the engine. That's really difficult to do while filming because it required a whole lot of force. This thing is unbelievably tight with the spring tension on these engines. That spring tensioner has a lot of tension, so it takes a lot. It almost feels like you're going to break something. You got to put so much pressure and effort into it. So I'm going to pause here. Go ahead and go over what we need to do first. First things first, on this job you definitely do need to disconnect the battery, and then we're going to remove the AC fan, which is right here. There's a 10 mil bolt right here, and there's another one right here, and then you have to remove the coolant reservoir tank, and then you can unbolt the harness from the alternator, and then unbolt the alternator bolts to remove it from the top here. We'll have to disconnect some connectors on the bottom for this fan underneath the front bumper, but we're going to go ahead and get into that. So first thing I'm going to do, like I said, is disconnect this negative. And on the automatic transmission, it's a 19 millimeter on that belt tensioner. On the manual transmission, I believe it's a 14 millimeter wrench that you're going to need, or breaker bar rather. So we're going to disconnect this. Wiggle that off, set it aside to where it can't touch. You don't want it making connection with that battery while you're down here with the alternator. You don't want it to shorten out, sparking on you. I'm going to do, and the whole reason why this alternator went out is because of the front spool valve leaks oil on these, which I addressed in a previous video. And it actually, this is the second time doing this. I'm gonna pause here and get the tools here. Alright, now I'm back with the correct tool here, the screwdriver, to release it. You got one here, little plastic rivets. Pop that off. Now you can see down in here and see the alternator better, right down in here. And this is a newer alternator, it's only been on there a year. And like I said, the spool valve right here leaks the oil, comes down, runs down by the dipstick, drops down here, runs down, and goes right down on top of the alternator, and it burns it out. And actually, I've already fixed that issue with the spool valve leaking, and it didn't burn the alternator out at the time. It actually went out after I fixed it, I guess from the previous oil being saturated on it. So now we get to replace the alternator again, now that the oil leak here is corrected. So we're gonna get in here and pull this cover off to give you access to that bolt down in there. So we need to grab an extension here. So you want to remove this bolt here. So you want to take this 10mm bolt out. Alright, and that's going to pry that up. Now you can get in here to remove this one. And that looks like it's going to be a 13. So I'm going to pause to grab that. Alright, so I'm back now. So it's actually a 12mm socket that goes in there. So I broke that loose. Now I'm going to remove that bolt. Pull this wire harness up. Handy little magnetic tool to grab a hold of that. So now I can remove this somewhat out of the way. So we got some connectors here. Gonna pull this boot back here. So connector right down in here. Once you pull the boot off, you can get access to the connector to push it in and release it. See, it pops out right there. You just push right here, pull out, push down on that tab there. So you're gonna have to pull these loose here, pull these out. And actually, this is my actual first time doing this. The first time I actually paid a buddy of mine to do it. So I'm kind of going with the learning curve here with you. There's another connector down there at the bottom on this wire here it's attached to. So we're gonna get in here and push down on that tab and pull that out. And they do not give you any room to work in these things. Alright, so we got that tab pushed in and pulled out. And that goes down. Looks like it went down to the AC compressor. Alright, so what I'm going to do here is just kind of pull this out of the way for now. So now we got better access here to your alternator. And then we got the belt free already. So we got one bolt in this bracket here, right in here. It needs to be removed. It's going into the cylinder head. That's one of the bolts that we have to remove. So I'm going to go ahead and position this out of the way. Remove this coolant reservoir. I'm going to pause it right here because I'm going to need both hands to do this. Alright, so I'm back. What I did was I grabbed a hold of this reservoir with both hands, just pull it up on it, and then you can pull it up out of the way. You want to set that aside so it doesn't spill your coolant out. So I'm just going to stick it over here somewhere where it'll stay for now. Alright, so now we can go back in here, move this out of the way. Now we can see the alternator better and see where we're going to be pulling it up and out of the cavity here. So the fun part's going to be now is getting to these bolts. I've got an AC line going around the pulley here. And we do need to remove this radiator fan or AC fan. We're gonna go ahead and do that now. I'm gonna go underneath and disconnect the harnesses. I don't know if I can be able to get good footage of that because I'm gonna be low on the ground. I'm not on a lift here. So I'm trying to do this as like a do-it-yourself if you did it at home in your driveway or your garage. And this is that bracket where the coolant reservoir slides into and sits on. So I'm going to pause here and go underneath. Alright, so I'm back up top. So what it is, I went down below. There's two bolts down there. And I don't see if you can see my chrome ratchet down there. I just went ahead and really regretting not putting the front wheels on my ramps to lift the front of the vehicle up because I had to reach under there and just feel. I couldn't really see, couldn't get underneath there far enough to see anything. Just had to reach and feel, but I got the, see if I can get a better angle here. Got the ratchet down on the bolt there. On the bottom, there's one on each side, so I'm gonna go ahead and remove those. Alright, so I got the one on the left side here removed, the bottom bolt, and I removed the two top ones here. You can see that one there and this one here, got those removed. So now you can pry back on the fan a little bit, and there's a connector right here that I got to undo, and there's a bolt underneath that connector on the bottom that I got to remove. It's gonna be hard to do this on film, so I'm gonna need both hands, so I'm gonna go ahead and do that now. Alright, so I got this connector here undone. It was a little tricky. It's a little tight area to get your hand in there to get, press the tab to release it. It goes down. Let me move it out of the way here. It goes down and connects down in there. So now I'm still struggling with the bolt on the bottom there. I really wish I would have lifted this on my ramp so I can get up under there and see better. It looks like I'm gonna have to use a wrench to get in there instead of a socket and ratchet. So I'm gonna do that here. Put it on pause and get to that bolt down there. Alright, so I got that bolt down free. You don't have to back it all the way out. It's just you just have to loosen that one. You can see it down in there, down in the bottom right there. Now you just pull this fan out, but one thing to caution is these are sharp edges on these metal fan blade shroud, this shroud that goes around the blade, and it is extremely sharp, as it has sliced me a few times doing this. light here. It's starting to get a little dark on me. So now I'm just going to lift up on this fan and work it out. Alright, so these bottom bolts, you'll see they have a notch there and a notch there, so you don't have to completely remove them. You just loosen them up to where you can slide the fan out, which is nice, because putting them back in from the bottom without being able to see and just feel around would have been really extremely fun. So I'm going to set this down. Alright, so now we got clear access to the alternator here and be able to pull it out once we get these bolts removed from it. Just pull it right out the top here. Probably have to twist it and wiggle it out. So I'm going to go ahead and remove these bolts. Like I said, there's actually two in this bracket. One's only holding the bracket though, the other one is going into the head there. You can see it in between the bracket notch there. So I'm going to remove that and see how many other bolts we got on this. There should be at least one more. And then give you a better look down here where where I left that bolt in there at the bottom, so you can slide that shroud back down on that and tighten it back up. Alright, so I'm going to pause this as I'm going to need both hands to remove these bolts on this alternator. Alright, so I got the ratchet and socket on this bolt here. Show you down here where it is. It's right down in there between that bracket. And I got my ratchet over here with a little extension on it, a little short extension. This is a 12mm bolt, so I'm going to go ahead and loosen that now, because I'm going to need both hands to do that. Alright, so I got the second bolt on the bottom is underneath the alternator, right on top of the AC compressor pulley. You can see the socket I have on there. It's a 14mm on that one. It's down below this bigger ratchet here for the belt tensioner. Still got my ratchet on that. You can see the socket there sticking out a little bit, the chrome socket just beneath the below the belt there. We're going to go ahead and remove that. I'm going to need both hands to do that, so I'm going to put it on pause again. Alright, back. I'm going to show you my setup real quick before I remove this bolt. I switched out for a deep 14mm socket. The shallow wasn't long enough to get my ratchet to clear the alternator pulley. So I got a deep 14mm socket on there now and the ratchet on there. And I'm going to go ahead and remove that now. Alright, so I'm back. I got the bottom alternator bolt out. There's two bolts that hold it in there. It's right there. You get the one short one on the top bracket and the longer one at the bottom. The one on the bottom is a 14mm socket. The short one there is a 12mm socket. So now I just wiggle this thing out back and forth and got it free from the bracket. It sits down there. The bracket, it's hard to see down there. It's dark in there, but I can't hold this and get a light. But you want to be careful pulling this up that you don't run it into your radiator here. You don't want to damage those fins on the radiator. So we're just going to pull it and wiggle it up here and just work it through just like that. And that is it for taking it out. Anyways, that's where that bracket, that bottom bolt goes through that hole there. And this little edge here like slides down into that bracket right over in there, and that gap between the over top of the AC compressor there, it slides right in between those. That's a tight fit, so you gotta wiggle it out of there. So I actually don't have the new alternator. I have to get this one out to return it, because this one's going to be a warranty one, because I just had this replaced about a year ago. So I'm gonna pause it here, or actually probably cut it off here, and then take this in tomorrow to get the new alternator to put in. Going back is just going to be the reversal of removing it. But I hope this video helps somebody out there. If you got a battery light, or if you need an alternator replaced on your 2010 Honda Accord with a 3.5 liter engine. Probably going to be from like a 08 to 2012 model range. Should be the same. Should be similar on the Odysseys, and as this engine's also used in those models as well. Pretty popular. It's pretty much the only V6 they had in that year model. So hope you enjoyed this. Give it a like if you enjoyed it, and leave some comments if you have any questions, and I'll try my best to answer them. Thank you.